I'm here in,
St Pancras Station,
yeah,
the lobby of a rather nice hotel in St Pancras.
yeah, I mean the seat behind us doesn't look amazing, but trust me, if you could see the other direction, it's beautiful. And I'm with Nick Mailer, who's an intellectual guy. I mean, right? Yeah, a philosopher, a scientist, an explorer of bad hypotheses, I think would be fair to say.
I think that probably is fair to say. The ponderance of these poor quality, confounded epidemiological studies is extraordinary. And of course, every 2 weeks, red meat's going to kill you because of the latest torturing, of the nurses' health study data. That poor old study. Every 2 weeks, Harvard gets bored and publishes something else about what red meat's going to do to you next. And this is where I am utterly certain that our opposition to red meat is nothing to do with the kind of 1950s discoveries or even slightly earlier discoveries about the possible problems with the saturated fat in the meat or the iron or whatever. I'm utterly certain that it's to do with an age-old sumptuary issue where we associated red meat with carnality and with sin. If you go back, there are writings that go back centuries. Religious vegetarianism actually goes back centuries in this regard, and that you eat meat, it's to do with lust, it's to do with the blood, it's to do with the devil, it's to do with carnality. Carnal means meat.
The same root.
And that is. So, and of course, it's
a Puritan type stuff.
And there's a little bit of, well, not a little bit, quite a lot of Machiavellianism about this, because the people in charge said to the peasantry, "You don't want this meat stuff; it's sinful anyway, and it's dangerous." Of course,
we'll look after that.
We'll suffer the fatted kid for you, and then, of course, we might lose the explicit religious message, but that particular ethos.
It's still
everywhere.
alive.
You look at people like Keyes and their discussion of red meat, just the phrase, it's redolent, isn't it? It's not meat, it's red meat. Okay?
Yeah.
And then you think about, so then people are very ready to, there's a thing in philosophy called the enthymeme, which is effectively usually a syllogism, an argument, well, there'll be 3 parts to it. And then you get your audience accepted enthymeme where you leave out you leave out one of the parts, and it's just taken as red. So you kind of say, of course, red meat. We don't eat red meat because red meat is bad. But there's never any other part of the argument about that. And we have this general shared understanding. There's something a bit shifty about it. There's something a little bit that's not quite right. Remember, in the Garden of Eden, we were all vegetarian. Eating meat came after the fall. This permeates our culture. And while people don't know that explicitly, it's like an osmotic effect that has driven people's attitudes to these things. Have you ever wondered why the notion? Think about how people perceive veganism as this morally pure crusade.
Oh, a higher moral ground of some sort.
Where do you think this all comes from? Do you remember why Dr. Kellogg created Corn Flakes?
Oh, I heard the story, but remind me.
He was very, very upset about boys in particular, masturbating.
Oh,
and he wanted to look at the perfect food to calm the desires. And he said it's a bit like Dr. Stefan Guillenet in that he wanted to find the most boring, the least rewarding, the least lascivious, luscious food. He said, what could be more boring and what could be more dulling to the senses in all senses of the term than dried up old bits of corn?
Flakes.
And so he had the
Cardboard.
sanatorium. There's even a movie about it called The Road to Wellville, where he was basically a puritanical madman, and he had these weird devices that he put on to stop yourself fiddling as well. So that's where Corn Flakes comes from. The wholesome
An
breakfast.
obsession with onanism.
The wholesome breakfast comes with an obsession with onanism. And so when you realise...
And Guillenet. I like the way you bring him up in the same context practice.
I call him Reverend Guillenet because I truly believe... I wonder whether he's got some Huguenot.
Sorry, Stefan.
Stefan Guillenet, please tell me you've got Huguenot background. It would just be so perfect. And his food reward hypothesis just begs the question in the most ridiculous way, because of course it assumes that food reward is a platonic essence, and that there is some sort of vector you can give to food or scale. That's its reward. Well, I'll tell you what. A couple of years ago, I had a horrible dysentery thing, gastric flu, whatever, and I was the very thought of the food that I love the most made me feel utterly bilious. I couldn't.
Oh yeah,
it made me. The thought of eating anything was revolting, including high reward food. Didn't matter if it was high reward. Didn't matter if it was a packet of chips or if it were a donut or whatever. It was utterly revolting. Actually, that's a black swan enough, because what we're saying is that your biological and metabolic and endocrinologic milieu completely changes.
Completely overrides
what is rewarding. So in fact, it's your body's endocrinological needs or its derangement that drives what's rewarding.
Yes,
so
that's the other way about.
So one may well say, yes. Funnily enough, 2 hours after I drink a can of Coke and have a Mars bar, I find doing the same thing very rewarding. It's high reward, and yet if I eat some very dull gruel, I don't find it quite as rewarding. Oh, you don't say.
Yeah, it's again too simplistic.
Now look, there may well be some sort of argument for hedonic pathways and how you can trick the brain to perceive that there are fewer or greater or more energy content than there actually is, or whatever. I mean, there's this huge argument about artificial sweeteners, which actually the science behind all these scare stories is utter rubbish. And I'm going to be talking at AHS about some of these. It is so awful, the science
to add to the mountain of bad science. But on the DNA stuff, so maybe the food reward or how palatable it is could add something to the overeating problem and the obese problem. Something. But to call it the central thing, I agree, is crazy.
And to say, yes, you see, it's the brain deciding what are you actually saying? That, yeah, of course, without the brain we'd be dead. So what are you talking about?
Or people who blame the hypothalamus for the whole thing, and I try to explain to those people that's like the computer in your car, the ECU unit that controls your car. But at the end of the day, overwhelmingly, when there's something wrong with your car, it's not that the computer broke. It's the inputs from the sensors.
People forget that we're a slightly cantankerous confederation. That's what our body is. The fat cells,
microbiome,
and the fat cells kind of want their own thing, and the rest of the body was. Then sometimes it was literally that. I mean, if you look at the mitochondrion.
Oh yes, they're absorbed by us. The mother.
The mitochondrion was literally basically like. What was it?
An oxygen-using little bacteria that could use oxygen to burn fat.
Yes, it was kind of little parasite that and then we suddenly came to an accommodation. So we're literally this federation. We're a kind of union federation of different organisms that have evolved in different ways and have to work together in an exquisitely good way. Otherwise, Brexit happens. And,
and we know what that disaster that is.
Metabolic Brexit.
Yeah, and signalling is needed to hold all these guys and do the right thing to be part of the whole. And if the signalling goes off, that's what I think Ron Rosedale says. All disease is a signalling problem. There's no exception.
Exactly, and Ron Rosedale is quite right in that every cell in your body effectively, we know this. I mean, what was that the most famous? They took from a woman who had a cancer.
Oh, it was 50 years ago, wasn't it?
And her cells are still living today.
Yeah, it's kind of gross, but they do. There's a woman's name on those cells.
Exactly. Forgive me for not remembering.
Oh, no.
And her cells, so in a peculiar way, that philosophical way, she hasn't died.
No,
because a bit of
the bad part of her is still alive.
A bit of her continues to live in all senses of the term living. You know, when you study what life means in biology and so on, some of her is still living. But you would never say that's her, because when we talk about who we are these. It's the whole of our confederation.
Yeah, the soma, the body, the os, or whatever.
And as Rosedale says, without proper signalling, the whole thing just comes to a shuddering chaos.
And it's doing it every day, and millions of people are shuddering to the end because of their signalling, not because of food reward.
Yes, or let us be very generous and say whatever food reward says one way or the other, it's not that your food is too tasty that's making you drop dead of a heart attack.
Yeah.
You don't die of hypertastyitis. That's not what happens.
No.
So there's something paradoxically unrewarding about the food reward hypothesis, and that even taking it under its own terms, it really doesn't get us anywhere.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't add really much to the argument at all.
But that's why I said,
I like ApoB, I think.
but people like it because
It's simplistic.
It ties into that slightly moral high ground.
Puritan
I
type.
I don't eat this processed rubbish,
Yeah,
Also,
look at me, I'm
let's
not
talk about-
fat and lazy.
Also, let's talk about processed for a moment. It's such an easy term to use. Oh, don't eat processed food. I hate the phrase, and I have to say, jerk, just eat real food, which is, I'll tell you why I don't like that phrase. Go to a vegan, they will tell you the exact same thing.
Yeah,
What
their
we always
version
say-
of real
yes,
food.
which includes tofu and seitan and all this stuff.
Soy stuff.
Yeah, and you said, how can you call that real food? Well, it comes from nature, but it's processed. Yes, but your meat's processed as well. What do you think hanging your meat is, and salting it and curing it and all that?
It becomes farce.
So then,
No.
so I said, I don't want to use these value-laden judgment terms. I don't care if your food is processed. I don't care if it was made in a factory or made in a little hut in the jungle. I don't give a damn. You tell me what it does to your metabolism. You tell me how it affects our evolved milieu, and then I will judge it. I am not going to. It's a bit like judging somebody by saying, "Oh, that person's wearing, medallion or the high heels, a bit tarty,
Or went to a
bit
certain
macho."
school or
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
Yeah, they may be fine, they may be not.
And look, and you can say there are associations. Actually,
Yeah.
If it's Mr. Medallion Man or
It's generally
Ms.
picked.
Stilettos, there may be certain things that you can make judgments about, but you could be dangerous and you could be way off. We talk about the Mediterranean diet. Some of the things that are always left off the Mediterranean diet, because we don't like to talk about that or admit it because it's sinful, is the processed meat, the cured meats.
Yeah,
The
plenty.
very phrase charcuterie is kind of ignored when we talk about the Mediterranean diet, and then people get all obsessed about nitrates and nitrites. Yes, there are more nitrates and nitrites in the broccoli or even in the spit in your mouth than in a slice of salami, but we ignore that. There was a wonderful article in the BBC on the BBC News website a few years ago about in 1 week. There's an article about all dangers of nitrates or nitrites in processed food, and these things are bad, blah blah blah, epidemiologically, and here's the putative mechanism. A week later, miracle substance found in beetroot that helps to lower your blood pressure, blah blah blah. What's this miracle? Nitrates. The same molecule the week before was the killer. The week later in beets, it was the savior.
So really, there's no credibility in science anymore unless you research it yourself from a position of knowledge and check everything out yourself. It's sad, but
I treat science like I treat people these days. When I was younger, I had a very mannequin view of people, in that there were good people and there were bad people, and the moment I found something bad about a good person, they were off my list, and that was it. I think as you get older, you have to be more sophisticated. You realize that everybody has their foibles and their faults, and you distill the good out of them, and you try to forgive or ignore their foibles. I'm kind of a bit like that with science as well now, in that I will say, what can we distill out of this pot of
what of use
mess?
can we take from this mess of a study where they have confounding and didn't control for certain things? But let's see.
Yeah, but that can have that can be taken too far. It can be dangerous, and I've seen this happen as well, where somebody will. Remember the TMAO scare, where meat causes TMAO in the body, and then that causes you to explode and
just
commit
ignite the
atrocities.
furniture.
Of course, the fact that fish has a lot more TMAO, we ignored that. It was the carnitine, and they were, stay away from all that stuff. And it was a complete perspective study, epidemiological rubbish.
But they know they won't be challenged because someone like you or me can challenge in a comment on a web or on a news item about it. But no one's going to come back to them and say challenge them.
But you know what was sad? But you know what was sad about that? And I did like, people reacted from our side. People like I think this particular reaction, I don't want to be misquoting, it was something like Denise Minger, and said, okay, here's what's wrong with this study. That's bad. 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 And that's bad. And you food questionnaire stuff. And by the end of it, you're saying, this is a pile of nonsense. You can't build anything on it. And he says, but now let's see what we can learn from it. Okay, well maybe here's why processed foods are bad, and this is bad, and certain processed meats might be. No, you don't get to make that leap. If you have just falsified something beyond use, you don't get to use its data.
You
at that
discard
point
it.
to build further hypotheses upon that data. You can't do that. It's a tempting rhetorical effect. You say, okay, well we've got all this rubbish here. Now let's see what the lessons we can learn as if it were true. No, you can't do that. So if you can't distill anything from it, then don't pretend that you have. I think that can be quite dangerous, and we see it on our side quite often. I think that people will say, okay, this is probably rubbish, but don't eat hot dogs. Well, maybe don't eat hot dogs, but you're not going to get that out of that study. Sorry, you've just admitted it.
Wait for the next study that's a proper one that talks to hot dogs properly.
Well, exactly.
And until then, screw it, eat them if you want.
Well, exactly, and I do, and I have to say I'm not going to be very popular in the kind of paleolist movement. I will eat good quality hot dogs merely because I want the animals to be treated well. But between you and me, I think probably if you ate the pink slime stuff, you wouldn't be that badly off compared to eating a donut. And I know one's not allowed to say that, but that's what I actually think.
I would guess so. Probably, I would go with. I'd rather eat a random hot dog than eat the donut.
Than a Krispy Kreme.
Because I know what the donut's going to do, and the random thing is it's just mostly fat. And once it's, the only exception is if I thought it was full of seed oils and vegetable oils, I wouldn't be happy. Yeah. But if I knew it was just animal gore mixed with some fillers, what the hell?
well, exactly. And if we call it something special, we call it cylindrical haggis, then it sounds fine.
There you are. Then it's bloody cultural. Then it's fantastic.
Exactly.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Well, that was a fun ramble.
It was.
We haven't even started yet.
I can never. I just needed a break for a minute.